Denise Jackson measured her life in shifts: morning shift, evening shift, overtime when she could get it. At 55 years old, after more than 3 decades cleaning office buildings in downtown Chicago, she had nothing to show for it except aching knees and a stack of unpaid bills tucked inside a kitchen drawer she avoided opening. Every weekday, before the sun even considered rising, she boarded the bus from the south side toward the glittering glass towers of the Loop, buildings she polished but would never belong to. She vacuumed carpets softer than anything in her own apartment. She wiped fingerprints from conference tables where executives discussed numbers larger than her entire lifetime earnings. She emptied trash cans filled with catered leftovers while calculating whether she could afford fresh fruit that week. Her bank account rarely held more than a few $100s. No savings, no retirement plan, no emergency cushion, just survival. The rent had increased again that year. Groceries cost more every month. The credit card she once opened, just in case, now carried a balance that refused to shrink. And her knees cracked sharply every time she climbed the subway stairs, like old wood threatening to split. Sometimes, late at night, while mopping marble floors under fluorescent lights, she whispered the question she was too afraid to say out loud during the day. What happens when I can't do this anymore? Her 2 grown sons loved her, but they were barely staying afloat themselves. One worked delivery apps, chasing tips that never seemed steady. The other bounced between short-term jobs, always one paycheck behind. They leaned on her more than she admitted. Small loans here, a utility bill there. She never said no. That Tuesday evening, Denise stepped out of the office building carrying exactly $280 in her coat pocket, extra money from cleaning a small law office over the weekend. It felt heavier than it should have, not because it was a lot, but because every dollar already had an assignment in her mind. Gas, minimum credit card payment, milk, eggs. She walked to the bus stop under a flickering streetlight, shoulders curved inward from years of carrying more than groceries. The cold air bit at her face. She stared at the cracked pavement, lost in calculation. There was an older woman sitting on the bench, gray braids tucked neatly beneath a knit cap, a long wool coat, straight posture, calm eyes, the kind of calm that felt out of place in a city always rushing. Denise sighed, deep and tired, without realizing it. The woman glanced at her. That sigh weighs more than your purse, baby. Denise blinked, embarrassed. Sorry, just long day. The woman studied her quietly, not judging, just observing. At 55, she said slowly, I was exactly where you are. Widow, 3 kids, no money, no plan, just fear. Denise looked up, skeptical. This woman did not look afraid of anything. What changed? Denise asked. You hit the lottery? The woman smiled faintly. Better than that. I learned the 7-day rule. Denise almost laughed. 7 days? I've been stuck for 30 years. I'm not talking about getting rich in a week, the woman replied calmly. I'm talking about waking up. The bus headlights appeared in the distance. Tomorrow, the woman continued, standing slowly. 6 p.m., Washington Park, same bench, if you're ready to follow instructions exactly. No adjustments, no excuses. The bus doors opened with a hydraulic hiss. The woman stepped inside. Denise didn't move. She watched the bus drive away without her. The $280 burned in her pocket. That night, she barely slept. She stared at the cracks in her apartment ceiling and imagined 10 more years exactly like this, then 15, then 20, slower, more tired, more invisible. Her body would give out before the bills did. At 5:42 p.m. the next evening, Denise stood outside Washington Park, telling herself she was foolish for coming. She almost turned around twice, but something stronger than pride kept her walking. Miss Eleanor, that was her name, was already seated on the bench. No surprise in her face, no satisfaction, just expectation. Day 1, Eleanor said without greeting. You face your enemy. I don't have enemies, Denise replied defensively. Eleanor reached into her bag and handed her a small spiral notebook and a pen. Your enemy is the lie you tell yourself every day, that you don't know where your money goes. Denise crossed her arms. I already know I don't make enough. That's not the same thing, Eleanor said gently. You think you know. Thinking isn't knowing. The assignment was simple. When Denise got home, she would write down every dollar she had spent in the last 7 days. Every coffee, every bus ride, every fast food stop, every subscription, every cigarette, every swipe. No rounding, Eleanor warned. No hiding, no excuses. That night, Denise sat at her small kitchen table under a dim light bulb and began writing. Bus fare, lunches she didn't pack, morning coffee and pastry, cigarettes, streaming services, impulse convenience store purchases, cable bills she barely watched. The numbers added up faster than she expected. When she finished calculating, her pen hovered in the air. Over $360 in 1 week. Her stomach tightened. She tried to justify it. She worked hard. She deserved small comforts. It wasn't that much, but it was. $360 wasn't rent money, but it wasn't nothing, and she couldn't remember enjoying most of it. The coffee was routine, the cigarettes automatic, the streaming noise just background distraction while she fell asleep exhausted. Money leaving her life without building anything. For the first time in years, she wasn't angry at the economy, or her boss, or inflation. She was staring at her own handwriting. Day one didn't give her hope. It gave her truth, and truth was uncomfortable. But beneath the discomfort, something unfamiliar stirred. Control. Small, fragile, but real. For the first time in decades, Denise wasn't just surviving her life. She was examining it, and that was the beginning. The next evening, Denise walked into Washington Park with the paper folded tightly in her hand. She hadn't slept well, not because of fear, because of awareness. Once you see the numbers, you can't unsee them. Miss Eleanor was already sitting on the bench, just like the night before, calm, still, as if time didn't rush her the way it rushed everyone else. Denise handed her the paper without a word. Eleanor read silently, her finger moving down each line. When she finished, she nodded once. Good, that doesn't feel good, Denise muttered. It's not supposed to, Eleanor replied. Truth is uncomfortable. That's why most peep. Denise crossed her arm. Day 2, Eleanor said. Choose your bat. From that list, Denise had to eliminate 3 expenses, not 2, not the smallest ones, 3 that actually hurt. For the next 5 days, Eleanor continued, you will not spend a single dollar on those 3 things. No exceptions, no bad days, no, just this once. Denise stared at her own handwriting. Morning coffee and pastry, cigarettes, cable television. Her chest tightened. That coffee is the only thing I look forward to before work. The cigarette is how I breathe when I'm stressed. The TV keeps the silence away. Eleanor didn't blink. They don't help you breathe, she said calmly. They help you stay numb. Denise felt defensive heat rise in her face. You don't understand what my days are like. I understand more than you think, Eleanor replied softly. But I also understand this. Comfort is expensive when you can't afford it. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Denise drew a line through. Coffee, cigarettes, cable. The pen felt heavy. It wasn't just about money. It felt like she was cutting off pieces of her routine, pieces that made survival tolerable. That night, she passed the corner cafe without stopping. The smell of fresh coffee drifted into the cold air like temptation. Her steps slowed. Her hand almost reached for her wallet, but she kept walking. At home, the quiet was louder than usual without the television humming in the background. She sat at her small kitchen table, listening to the refrigerator cycle on and off. Her hands twitched from nicotine withdrawal. Her head ached without caffeine. By the 3rd day, her body felt like it was rebelling. She arrived at the park, irritated and exhausted. This is stupid, she snapped. I feel worse, not better. Eleanor let her speak, let her vent. When Denise finished, Eleanor asked one simple question. How much have you saved so far? Denise blinked. She hadn't calculated. Quick math ran through her head. 3 days without coffee, 3 days without cigarettes, no cable, about $140, still in her account, not gone. That's not life-changing, Denise muttered. No, Eleanor agreed, but it's proof. Proof of what? That you are not powerless. That word hit differently. Powerless. Denise had never described herself that way, but she had lived like it. Day 3, Eleanor said, pulling an envelope from her bag. You plant the seed. She wrote 3 words on the front in neat handwriting. New life. Fund. That money doesn't get touched, Eleanor continued. Not for emergencies. Not for guilt. Not for boredom. It stays. Denise hesitated. She had always used extra money to patch holes, never to build anything. What if something happens? She asked. Something is always happening, Eleanor replied. That's why you've never built anything. Reluctantly, Denise transferred the saved amount into the envelope that night. She placed it in the back of her closet, behind winter boots she rarely wore. It felt strange, wrong, almost irresponsible, but also intentional. By day 4, the cravings were still there, but weaker. Instead of buying coffee, she made tea at home in an old travel mug she found in a cabinet. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't Instagram-worthy, but it was hers. When anxiety hit during her shift, she stepped outside and walked around the block instead of lighting a cigarette. Her lungs burned from the cold air, but she could breathe. That evening in the park, Eleanor introduced the next concept, You can't just remove, she said. You must replace. Replace with what? With something that builds instead of drains. Denise frowned. Like what? Instead of cable, read. Instead of scrolling, plan. Instead of spending, track. Track. That word lingered. For the first time in years, Denise started writing down every dollar that entered and left her life. It felt tedious, but it also felt organized. By day 5, something subtle had shifted. Her posture wasn't collapsing inward as much. Her shoulders didn't feel quite as heavy, not because her life had changed, but because she had. That night, the real test arrived. Her phone rang. Her younger son. "Ma, I'm short on rent again. Can you help?" The old reflex activated immediately. Of course, I'll figure it out. I'll send something. But then she thought about the envelope in her closet, the new life fund. She swallowed hard. "I can't," she said quietly. "I'm reorganizing my finances." Silence. "You've always helped." Her chest tightened. "I know," she replied, "and that's why nothing changes." The words felt foreign, uncomfortable, but true. After hanging up, she sat in her dim kitchen expecting guilt to swallow her whole. Instead, something else surfaced. Respect for herself. And for the first time in decades, Denise understood something dangerous. Control doesn't feel dramatic. It feels quiet. And once you taste it, going back feels impossible. By day 6, something about Denise had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but visibly. She walked into Washington Park with her shoulders slightly straighter. Her hair was pulled back neatly. She carried her homemade tea in a simple thermos she had bought with part of the money she'd saved, not as an expense, but as a decision. Miss Eleanor noticed immediately. "You're standing differently," she said. "I feel different," Denise admitted. The cravings hadn't disappeared completely. The bills hadn't vanished. Her job was still exhausting, but the fog, the heavy, helpless fog, had started to thin. "Good," Eleanor nodded. Day 6. Multiply. Denise sat down. "Multiply what?" "Your control," Eleanor replied. "Cutting expenses is survival. Now we build." Denise frowned. "I already work full-time." "I'm not talking about working more hours for someone else," Eleanor said. "I'm talking about using what you already know, for yourself." The idea sounded foreign. Denise had always been an employee, a worker, a helper, never the owner of anything. "What are you good at?" Eleanor asked. Denise shrugged. "Cleaning, cooking, organizing, that's it." "That's not it," Eleanor corrected gently. "That's skill." Denise hesitated. "And if you cleaned 2 houses on Saturdays? Privately. Cash. No company taking a cut." The thought felt intimidating. What if she failed? What if no one hired her? "You already clean offices," Eleanor continued. "Why are they more worthy than you?" The question stayed with Denise all night. The next morning, during her shift, she casually mentioned to a coworker that she might take on weekend cleaning jobs. By the end of the day, she had a phone number. By the end of the week, she had 2 Saturday appointments, $150 each, cash. When she placed that money into her envelope, now thicker than before, something clicked inside her chest. It wasn't just income, it was agency. That same week, a neighbor mentioned how hard it was to cook after long hospital shifts. An idea sparked. Sunday meal prep trays. Simple food. Affordable. Reliable. 10 trays at $12 each. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a startup pitch on television. It was practical. By day 7, Denise walked into the park with a folded piece of paper and a calm energy she hadn't felt in years. "I saved $520 this week," she said, "and I made $420 extra." Eleanor smiled, not surprised, just satisfied. "Tell me the rule," she said. Denise took a breath. Day 1, face the truth. Day 2, cut what drains you. Day 3, save something, anything. Day 4, replace habits, don't just remove them. Day 5, say no, even when it's uncomfortable. Day 6, use your skills to earn more. She paused. "And day 7? Eleanor prompted. Denise looked down at her hands. "Day 7 is understanding it was never about money." Eleanor nodded slowly. "It's about identity," Denise continued. "It's about becoming someone who makes decisions instead of excuses." There it was, the shift. 6 months later, Denise's life didn't look like a fairy tale. She still cleaned offices. She still woke up early. But now she had a $9,400 emergency fund. Her smallest debts were gone. Her weekend clients had increased. Her meal prep orders doubled. More importantly, she tracked every dollar. She decided where it went. One evening, sitting on that same park bench after finishing her Saturday jobs, Denise noticed a younger woman crying into her hands on the opposite side. The posture was familiar. Shoulders collapsed. eyes red, breathing heavy. Denise recognized it immediately. It was her, 6 months ago. She stood up and walked over slowly. "That sigh weighs more than your purse, baby," she said gently. The woman looked up, surprised. Denise sat beside her. "I used to think my life was already decided," she continued. "I was wrong." The younger woman wiped her eyes. "How did you fix it?" Denise smiled softly. "I didn't fix everything. I fixed 1 week." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, unused spiral notebook. "Let me tell you about the 7-day rule." And for the first time in her life, Denise wasn't waiting for someone to save her. She was the one passing the map.